Hello, today we're going to talk about rocks. We're going to try and keep it pretty basic today, and we'll go in depth more in the types of rock notes that we'll be doing next time. So let's talk basically what's a rock. Uh, a rock is a naturally occurring solid mixture of one or more minerals, or could even be organic matter. Rocks are characterized by how they're formed, by their composition, and by their texture. And they change over time through a process that we call the rock cycle. There are three different types of rocks, and these categories of types of rocks are based on how the rocks formed. So the three types of rocks are sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic. So all we're going to do today is just briefly describe what each of the three are, and that'll be it. Let's start with igneous rocks. So igneous rock forms as it cools from magma. So magma comes out from the earth through either a volcano or from a divergent plate boundary, and it eventually cools. And as it cools, we get igneous rocks. And that could cool on the surface of the earth, or it could happen within the earth. Um, Magma cools and solidifies between 700 and 1250 degrees Celsius, so it's still very, very hot when it first cools off um, and solidifies. And that magma, because magma can be made up of a whole bunch of different mixture of minerals, we get igneous rock that is made of a whole bunch of different minerals. Sedimentary rock, if you can look at the little animation here, you can see sedimentary rock is formed by erosion. Erosion happens when a rock is broken down by natural processes like weather, water running over it, wind, ice, snow, rain, or ocean movements, waves. And the sediments eventually are moved from one place to another, and they are deposited and laid down in layers. The older ones would be on the bottom, and then the next layer will build up, and the next layer, and the next layer, and the next layer. And eventually, those layers will become compacted and cemented together into a new rock. The last type of rock is a metamorphic rock. And this rock, the word metamorphic means to change or change shape. And in general, what happens is when you have a rock that undergoes extreme temperature and or pressure, but it doesn't actually ever melt into magma, it remains solid, it can actually still change. Think of it like putting cookie dough or a cake in the oven, and the oven bakes it into something new. It's kind of like what's happening. We have a rock, whether it could be an igneous rock or a sedimentary rock or a different metamorphic rock, that gets put down, usually deep into the earth at a convergent boundary at a subduction zone, that's being put under high pressure and high temperature, and it gets changed into a new rock, and we call that a metamorphic rock. Um, Again, it usually takes pretty deep inside the Earth's crust, but not so deep or so hot that it becomes magma. It never actually melts again, because if it melted and then formed a new rock, now that would be an igneous rock again. Now, the rocks again are constantly changing, and they all interconnect. So, an igneous rock can melt and become magma, a metamorphic rock can melt and become magma, or a sedimentary rock can melt and become magma. And any magma that cools off becomes an igneous rock. The same way, an igneous rock can get broken down by erosion into sediment, a metamorphic rock can get broken down by erosion into sediment, and a sedimentary rock can get broken down by erosion into sediment. And if the sediment forms into a new rock, we have a sedimentary rock. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a sedimentary or an igneous or a metamorphic rock. If it gets put under extreme heat and pressure, it will form a new metamorphic rock. So the rocks are constantly changing depending on where they are on the face of the earth going from one type of rock to another type of rock, or back into magma, or broken down into little sediments, um, constantly traveling throughout the rock cycle. And that's all we're going to talk about today. I just want a brief review, remind you what the three types of rocks are, how they're formed, um, and last thing I did mention earlier, there are a couple other characteristics that are important about rocks, and that is the composition. And again, all that means is what's it made of, what types of minerals are present in the rock when it forms, and texture. And basically the texture of the rock, how that rock looks. Does it have large particles in it or small particles, large grains or small grains? Basically, it tells about the pressure and the temperature that was present when the rock was forming. So those two things, chemical composition and texture, can tell us a lot about a rock. Um, but the what type of rock is purely based on how it's formed. So I hope you were reminded about the types of rocks from previous knowledge, and I will talk to you in class.